1, 2, 3, 4.
Welcome to episode 4 of the Immigrants and Exiles podcast, a conversation recorded at the Beachcomber Cafe in St Kilda between me, Moreno, and my friend Walter. This time we talk about bullying, neighbourliness and illegal immigrants. So where are we now, Walter? 1960s? What?
1960s, moving on into the 70s, probably early 70s. While your parents were up in Myrtleford, mine were down in Melbourne. And we had, what do you call it? Facevamo I pendolari. My mother and I, we were...
Commuters.
Commuters, that's right. Going backwards and forwards to Italy. Keep my mum happy, return her to her family because they weren't happy for my parents to have eloped the way they did. And I started living in Italy, doing some schooling there, studying there, then coming back here and getting lost, then getting reacclimatised here, and then I was seriously ill a couple of times in middle school years, so that took me away from school here again, and I was a stay-at-home student, and then I'd be back to Italy again. Anyway, I found that in Italy, nobody bullied me and nobody made me feel like an Aussie. I was an Italian who was back home. Whereas in Australia, I was often bullied probably because of the proximity of the name Mussolino to Mussolini. And
well, you've heard about my name, Moreno became Marino. Stop it. That's okay. That's enough. Yeah, keep going.
That amazed me when you said Marino. I thought, who the hell is he talking about?
Yeah.
It's Moreno.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Mussolini,
Yeah, the Italianness of my name. Walter sounds beautiful to my ears. Walter.
Yep.
Walter sounds a little bit kind of...
I'm sorry, I've always called you Walter.
I know.
I'll try to change.
Yes, all is forgiven. And in Italy, I was at home. What my parents had bred as their son, their creature, left me feeling debilitated in Australia.
Yep.
And there were a lot of circumstances that were also contributing to that. The alienness for me of the Anglo culture.
Before we go on,
the
question of names. My son, I called him Simone. We called him Simone, okay?
Yeah.
He gets, you know what he gets. He gets Simone. He has to call himself Simon. Usual rigmarole with Australians who can't pronounce foreign names. In Italy, he says whenever he goes for a holiday occasionally, he just loves it because people look at him and they say, "Hey, Simone," And this happens to me too. I remember the first time it happened. I'd taken my family back to Italy for a holiday. We were in St Mark's Square, and I hear someone call out, "Hey, Moreno!" And I turned around. I thought, who's calling me? And I realised it wasn't calling me. There was someone else called Moreno in St Mark's Square, and a friend was calling him, which is absolutely shocking. And it's this massive feeling of validation and acknowledgement. You are real, and it's not funny. Moreno is just Moreno. It's just a name. Bloody hell. Go on.
Valtteri.
Valtteri.
Yeah. So Roman. It's beautiful. I suppose it's the emotional edge that Italians live life with and with which they express their sentiments that just opens you up to the world, the environment that you're living in over there. And I think that's what makes Italy so attractive to foreigners from all cultures. Whereas in Australia, it's, can I say it? I think Australia's penal colony origins have made for a kind of prison sort of mentality where even, and everybody says this, where even your neighbours are just your cell block inmates, but you're not friends and you're just there out of enforced circumstances, so you endure each other's presence. But there's no social interaction.
No.
There was maybe when I was very, very little, some people would come out, the older Australians, say g'day, hello,
yes,
and then talk about the weather straight away. But over time, as they died off, through the, I suppose, the 70s and going forward, Australians became more insular, more like I would imagine, their penal colony origins. There's a kind of quiet hostility always. And it's talked about a lot these days when I ask people if they have the similar example, or is it just me?
Yeah.
Whereas in Italy, despite all the problems with foreign immigration, the overcrowding in the country, illegals coming from Eastern Europe, not just from Africa, and a rise in sort of crime at the level of the streets, petty crime, mafia gangs which aren't Italian, still people have cultivated over the millennia an ability to survive, to live, and they know that interaction rather than withdrawal from others makes life tolerable.
Yes.
Right? To know each other, even at some superficial level, is to feel a little bit more comfortable in each other's presence.
Of course. John Howard put it nicely. He said something along the lines of, he was trying to make a distinction between Australians and the way they relate to you as individuals. If you're a migrant, like Asian, I don't know, Chinese, Vietnamese, from the Middle East, you might be Lebanese or something else. The way that they treat you. So he says, Australians are very good one-on-one, but then they feel uncomfortable when there's a whole bunch of you. He was trying to justify something. I'm not quite sure where he was going with that.
He wanted to decide who we will speak to.
That's right, and under what terms we will speak to them. And talking about, Italians getting on, making life more tolerable when you're together. There was in San Ginese, I don't think he's there anymore now, but until maybe 10 years ago, there was an illegal immigrant. He was a Moroccan. And he ran a little flock of sheep on the edges of the roads. People would let him eat the grass. He let the sheep eat the grass. He made cheese. He had goats too. He did odd jobs. His family back in Morocco, whatever money he made, he sent it back to them, wife and 3 children. The local cops knew that he was illegal.
Of course, yeah.
But they let him be. They let him be. He used to come to my uncle's place for lunch. He'd be doing odd jobs for my uncle. They'd have him in the house, be eating and carrying on with them, visiting, coming around for coffee. But the fact that, he was illegally in Italy, no passport, no papers, nothing, and the cops just turned a blind eye. They just let him go. They just let him be.
That's right. It's an acceptance of the
humanity?
Yes, the humanity of all of us that binds us, whether we're wearing uniforms, whatever our skin colour is, whether we can actually speak a language. So I remember, for example, even in the 70s, being in Rome, walking around with my uncle along La Tiburtina, which leads you out of Rome towards Tivoli.
Yeah.
I vu comprar. Okay. The Moroccans, Algerians, who would open suitcases and sell you trinkets.
What does that mean? Do you want to buy?
Yeah, vuoi comprare.
Right, okay.
Vu comprar.
Yeah.
That was the way they spoke Italian.
Yeah.
And then later on in the 80s, the ones who came and worked in southern Italy, especially growing tomatoes, harvesting for the Italians. Even now, it's tolerated. Italians may grumble because, like everybody else on earth, they're fundamentally sort of racist in the sense that they like exclusivity and they're self-protective of their own environments, but they understand at a subconscious level that everybody is involved in the same struggle for life.
Whereas said about this, there was, as I was growing up, there was a reverse kind of racism in the environment that I grew up in. The Italian community that I was a part of, most of them were tobacco growers. They needed to hire workers during the harvest season, the picking season. My dad would go to Bonagilla, the migrant reception centre, that's near Albury or Wodonga, and hire workers. Because we never hired Australian workers, because Australians were lazy. This was the general understanding. They were lazy and they were usually drunk. Okay? They just drank beer all the time. A classic Australian man is leaning against, he's on the shady side of a shed with a can of beer in his hand. So there was this reverse kind of racism that I grew up with. You know, people thought Italians just ate spaghetti. The Italians thought the Australians were just always drunk. And there was a, you know, you could have debates about, do you drink Melbourne bitter or do you drink Victoria bitter? Do you drive a Falcon or do you drive a Holden? You know, this kind of culture, which, well, to me was completely alien as a kid growing up, but that's what I knew about Australians. We were racist, Walter.